Welcome to the Rogue Reader podcast. My name is James, and I love reading Star Wars books.
My name's Priscilla. I'm his wife, and I do enjoy books for fun.
Well, this is part 2 of The Princess and The Scoundrel, which we did part 1 last time. So we're going to finish up the book today. But let's start off with a quick recap. So, do you remember what happened last time?
No. Okay, so really quickly, Han and Leia get married. They go on their, I guess, publicity honeymoon for Leia, but of course Han is missing, being a smuggler, interact with some guy who wants to kill Leia, and then found a way to get rid of him. And I guess
he didn't want to kill her, he just wanted to capture her for a bounty.
For a bounty.
Kellad.
It's the same.
His name was Kellad.
Kellad. I'll call him Kellogg. So Kellogg, I think they put him in like one of those escape pods and threw him somewhere.
Yeah, they ended up just imprisoning him on the ship.
Yes.
Han didn't fire him into space.
Not yet, maybe. And then Leia wanted to go to another planet and suggested it as like another vacation spot for everyone. But then it turns out it's for negotiations. And it turns out she's like working on her honeymoon. Yes.
She wants they have a good power supply. They have a good fuel source, carnium there that they could use.
Yeah, and they found a way to trick the captain to go there instead. And everyone on the cruise ship, they thought they were vacationing one place, now they're vacationing another, and everyone's mad at whoever suggested it. I don't know if they know that Leia suggested it, right?
I don't know if they know Leia suggested it.
They're just upset.
It turns out this is just part of the crew, so they're still going to go to their beach planet, but now they're, instead of doing one thing, they're going to go to this ice planet in between.
Yeah, just think of it as if you're on a cruise. You thought you were going to Mexico, but then they're like, oh, we're going to make a hard detour to Alaska. And then we're going to go to Mexico.
Then we're going to go to Mexico.
Yeah. During December month.
Right.
But okay,
that's pretty good.
Cool.
Only other note is I want to just point out that Han did propose like the very next day after Return of the Jedi. Quick and simple. Yes, you mentioned Leia struggling to balance working with the New Republic and now being married, and she has a lot of walls she has to work on putting down with Han for that. So they're really just trying to figure out how to be a couple. She's also struggling with whether she wants to learn how to use the Force, because she doesn't want to use Vader's Force, as she calls it.
Also, I don't know if we covered this last time. Is there like a time frame, exact years of Return of the Jedi and when they're getting married?
This is like literally like within like a week after the Return of the Jedi.
Okay, I think I'm good on that recap for myself, unless there's more.
No, that's good.
Okay.
So, we're ready to continue. They had just landed on the ice planet where we last left off, Madurs. And Han was expecting this place to be like Hoth, because it's an ice planet, but it's different in that Hoth was windy and loud. And this planet, there's no wind blowing. It's just ice and silence. And it almost gives it like a magical feeling. I'm thinking like Disney's Frozen or something like that.
I love that.
It's not necessarily good for Han because it makes him think of being frozen in carbonite, but that was kind of the whole point. The author made this place as a reflection of what Han's going through. Just as a little fun fact, she named this planet after a combination of two of her favorite science fiction writers. I'm going to totally butcher these names. Madeleine L'Engle and Ursula K. Le Guin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Madeleine and Ursula Madurs. That's how she named the planet.
I don't hear it, but maybe if we listen
Madeleine Ursula Madurs. Yeah.
It's just not hitting me. I'm sorry.
Really?
Well, I'm not familiar with authors.
It's not authors. It's just simple words combining. How do you make a new word out of two words combined?
I don't know.
Okay.
I need more Alanis.
They get on the planet and they're greeted by these ice fishers in these sleighs pulled by these creatures called Proos. I think that's how you pronounce it. Proos. They're these tall, prancing, horse-like creatures, but they have horns and big ears.
Do you have pictures, or is
there's no pictures of Proos that I could find? I tried.
I would love to imagine like it. You said they're like unicorns?
They have horns and big ears, and they'll imagine horses with horns and big ears.
I don't like the ears.
Well, anyways,
unless it's like maybe they look cute, like Ponyta, for example.
I'm sure they're
from
cute
Pokemon,
because they're supposed to be kind of magical.
Yeah,
looking.
like those foxes.
Like Leia's like enchanted by them, and Han takes a moment to like look at his wife wearing white on this ice planet, laughing as she feeds these white horses. So he kind of just takes that moment in.
Also, I have to say, when I think of ears, I think of like horses with a horn and then big human ears.
No. I'm thinking rabbit ears in my head.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm thinking
almost like a goat,
not up, like drooping ears.
Okay.
That's what I imagine in my head.
I wish I thought that.
Not
right
human ear. They get in a sleigh, and one of the locals who drives it, her name is Nahai, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Nahai.
She drives them towards the main ice palaces they're going to on this planet, but they notice there's like some ruins of other ice palace in the distance, and they ask her about it, and she just kind of looks at it sad, and she just says, "Oh, that's the old city. It's the nature of ice. It's not permanent. It melts, it breaks, it cracks. Our art is all temporary, and it's more precious because of that." And then she just kind of takes them on their way. As they continue on, they also notice there's a black tower sticking out of the ground. And Leia asks Nahai what that is, and she pretends not to hear her. But she asks her again, and Nahai just, all she says is it's dangerous over there. But Leia can tell that it's... she can tell it has something to do with the Empire, and it seems like maybe the locals are afraid to talk about it.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah. They make it to the main ice palace, and it's basically what you would imagine. So it's like, again, I kind of think of like Frozen. Everything is made of ice, the furniture, the lights are in icicles. It's like this beautiful like ice palace like place.
Oh, there is a place that is like that, and I could be misremembering it. I think it's like in Norway.
That's where, isn't that where Frozen's based off of? Isn't it like a Norway fairy tale? I could be wrong on that too.
I wasn't referring to that. Little sidetrack, there is a place that's called the Ice Hotel. Maybe in Switzerland. I can't remember. It's in one of the European states though. And Sophia Nygaard also made, and a couple other traveler YouTubers, I'm sure. If you probably want a visual of that, look at the Ice Hotel, and that everything's made out of ice, and they have to build it like every like once a year within that time frame. And they have a permanent one where it still replicates as if like it's an ice hotel, but of course they have to refrigerate inside. But the actual official ice hotel, they even have places where you can get married, or they have like artists, ice sculptors who go in the ice hotel, and they make different rooms, and like they are kind of like art installations. So I can see, like, I'm visualizing that already.
Oh, maybe there's some inspiration there. It's warm inside because of I mentioned that they have that carnium. It's like laced in the walls, and that keeps the inside warm even though everything's made of ice. Leia meets with the prime minister. His name is Jens. He was the one who, last time, he did invite her to come, but she did get a message from him inviting her there. So she didn't just kind of pick this out of the blue, but she tries to talk to him about business right away, and he immediately just shuts her down, saying that she came here. He invited her here to see art, and that's it. And it seems like he's kind of afraid to talk in public. He takes them on a tour of the palace, and he showcases some guest houses to them. And Han asks them how long it takes to build, and he says it takes him about a month for each guest house. And Jens had previously said they weren't expecting visitors, so Han's like wondering like why did he build these guest houses here. Leia tries asking him again about joining the New Republic, but Jens just kind of keeps talking over her and saying they're independent, they don't need the New Republic, they don't need the Empire, whatever. And Han's just tired of this BS. He's not a politician, so he just asks Jens very loudly in front of everyone in the room, "Hey, what's up with the big black tower out in the ice?" And everyone in the room goes silent, and Jens kind of tries to deny knowing anything about it, but Han keeps pressing him, and finally Jens admits, he says, "All right, like a year ago the Empire came with an offer we couldn't refuse." And when Han asked what happened to him, he said, "I refused it." And just then an earthquake strikes, and it kind of starts shaking up everything, and it subsides, but it's enough to kind of shake up Han and Leia because you're in this thing full of ice and you have an earthquake, which isn't good. Leia continues to press Jens on the Empire, and he basically tells her that when they came a year ago with that black tower they saw on the ice, that Jens and his people, they managed to shoot it down. Leia starts to think about all the stuff that happened in that year, a year ago. That year ago is also when like the Empire took Bespin for its fuel, so it makes sense why they came to this place. And that was the year that Han was frozen in carbonite, and she thinks to everything that happened in that year. And the author, she makes a references to a bunch of the comics and things that the main Star Wars Marvel comics kind of charter what happened in that year, and she kind of just makes a bunch of references to those plot lines, which I always appreciate when they reference each other's work. Jens insists that Madurs doesn't need the New Republic or the Empire, and he kind of takes Leia to a media meeting, and there's all these reporters there, and one in particular also starts asking questions about like the ice quake that destroyed the palace, and Leia just kind of likes her, so
they were called ice quakes? I didn't even hear that first
time.
Yeah,
I think the book calls them ice quakes. They're earthquakes.
But it's the whole planet out of ice? Is that the gist of it? Why they call it ice quakes? It makes sense, earthquakes, actually, because it's Earth.
Yeah, this planet is all like covered in ice, and now that you say that, I'm not sure how clear, but it's possible that this is mainly an ocean planet and they're living on the surface ice.
Okay.
A lot of it is ocean, and they like fish and things there. So I think that makes sense why it would be ice quakes. I didn't even pick that up until you mentioned it. But Leia decides to use the attention to her advantage, so she announces to all the reporters that Prime Minister Jens has agreed to let her tour the broken ice palaces out there and let her give her tips on how they can make their buildings more sturdy. Mm-hmm. And all the cameras turn to Jens, and he can't say no because he's in front of all the cameras. So Han and Leia are in their guest quarters when they get a call from their attaché. I don't remember if you remember her name was Riola. She was kind of like their personal, like, not servant, but like attaché. She helped them on their tour.
Did they call her Areola?
I don't know. If you did, I cut that out. But her name is Riola.
Sorry.
And Riola tells them this. I think this is actually the next day that Jens had just rescinded all media access to the moon, and he sent all the reporters home. Han and Leia start discussing about what could be going on, and they agree that Jens seems to be lying about a lot of things. They just don't know what yet. And they have a tour scheduled to go see kind of the ice fishers, and supposedly there's also supposed to, at the end of this tour, go to the Black Tower and like the broken ice palaces. Leia says she feels like she has to do everything she can to help everyone while she can do it, because basically she's afraid that when the truth comes out that her father is Darth Vader, she's going to lose all influence in the public that she has. And she wants to do everything she can before that truth comes out. And Han reassures her that no matter what happens, she's never going to lose him, and she's spending too much time worrying about the future they need to focus on right now. And this is actually foreshadowing another book, Star Wars Bloodlines, which I think was by Claudia Gray. I have it.
Oh, Claudia Gray. Is there a series or is there a book called Bloodlines? Is that why I'm confusing it?
There might be.
Book 2?
Book 2.
It was the one.
Oh, you're right. Legacy of the Force Bloodlines, Book 2.
Okay,
yes.
My bad.
No, there's multiple Bloodline books.
But just a little tidbit. Claudia Gray, that's something is very interesting that James and I have like read the same authors. But Claudia Gray, I read her, I think, Catwoman book. And if I'm wrong, there's also another book she made called Defy the Stars. But yes, I'm familiar with her work, just not Star Wars related.
A lot of people like her Star Wars books. This is, again, referencing the Bloodlines book, where that book is about what happens when it comes out that the Leia's father is Darth Vader, and everything happens just like she's afraid. She loses like all kind of like respects in the political world and stuff, and it happens like around the time when it's supposed to happen, around the same time that Kylo Ren is or Ben Solo's training with Luke. So it's like years later, but it does eventually happen, and she kind of loses all her stature and stuff. Leia and Han do meet with the Prime Minister, and they get on their Pruse-led sleighs, and they go to the ice fishing, and it's pointedly away from the Black Tower and everything else. And while they're on the sleigh ride, I guess Leia's still wondering if she wants to learn how to use the Force one day, how it could help her, but she's also afraid it could lead her to war like it did Darth Vader. And she's kind of fidgeting with her ring when she's doing this, and then she hears a snap, and she looks down to see that part of it has kind of cracked. And because the ring, it's made out of a plant. It was made after a plant, after all, so it's not very sturdy.
So it's foreshadowing.
Yeah, you could see that as foreshadowing, yes. She does realize it's going to break eventually, but Han kind of puts her hand over hers, and she knows that even if it breaks, she'll always have him. They get to the fishing base. It's kind of like an underwater fishing base. I get a little confused reading the descriptions, honestly. It seems like at some points they're above the ice, and other points there's parts where they go like underneath, like in stations.
Right.
But they basically see examples of how they fish, and they have like harpoon divers, and they have like little submarines. and things. When she and Han are watching kind of one of the submarines shine a light, they realize it shines a light kind of in the direction of the tower, and they can see it extends really far under the water. And they also notice there seems to be no fish in the area around it.
So they don't survive on the livestock that...
The people on Maduras do. They survive solely like on all this fish and stuff, but what they notice is that none of the fish seem to be in the area around the Black Tower. Like they're avoiding it.
Oh, okay.
On their way out, they also stop at one point, like pointedly right in front of a security camera, and they realize that maybe like Jens and his people are being watched by someone.
Oh, that's why they couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, Han and Leia should be catching on to way more than they are. Like we pretty much already kind of figured out what's going on before they do. But.
So everything that is this book written as third person or second?
It's first person with each chapter alternating between Han and Leia's perspectives. Okay,
but they're noticing something, but they're just like they can't.
But they're not like outright saying, "Oh, it looks like the Empire's still here," which is what the conclusions like the reader makes super quickly. Like they're not thinking that, they're just like there's something with the Empire's kind of involved, and there's something going on, and they're hiding. But I just feel like it should be more obvious. But
okay,
maybe because we know it's a story, and to them it's real life. But.
Right.
They're brought back to the main palace for a banquet, and Han thinks that the glimpse of the tower underwater and like they're stopping in front of the security camera was on purpose. He thinks that Jens is trying to like kind of privately show them what's going on.
Good. Okay, so he's not on the side of like deterring them. He's still trying to feed him.
It seems like whatever he can do. For this banquet, Leia is described as wearing a dress that is indigo, but it shifts in the light to streaks of gold. Ooh. And they kind of sit at dinner, and Han has like a startled reaction. He kind of drops his fork because he realizes the last time he was at a formal dinner was on Bespin when Darth Vader was there and captured them. So he kind of has like this
still trauma.
Trauma, yeah. And Han also kind of admits that even though he said he was fine, he still has kind of trouble himself processing that Leia is Darth Vader's daughter. He kind of still has... He doesn't say it's bad, he just says he's still kind of processing it. Leia can sense that something's bothering him, so she excuses them from dinner. And they go back to their room, and I guess there's a part where they can take like a shortcut outside. So they're walking outside, and Leia's kind of just like twirling in the snow and like all the snowflakes and stuff. And Han's again just kind of taking in this sight of her in this like beautiful dress out in the snow. Aww. I guess I'm trying to point out these little moments because this book is a romance, and romances aren't really for me. So I feel like I could be glossing over more stuff like that. And so I try to point out where I can, because I may just gloss over it because I'm not a romance fan, but I want to like point out that there is like romantic like scenes and things in there.
No, we're here for the plot. That's not what we're here for. But if you do point
I'm
it
surprised
out,
to hear you say that.
Well, for the sake of Star Wars, it's all about like the story and politics. I do enjoy romance, but what kind of is ruining it for me is just how Hans was written before, and now there's this. Is it not Hans? Han, you're right.
We're still on Frozen.
But no, it's just I enjoy romance if it's purely supposed to be romance, like the Icebreaker series I read, or like several other books I read. Yeah. So I'm okay with like leaving out romance for the sake of the podcast, but. Just moving forward.
Well, this is also a review of the book, and I want people to know there's like...
Oh, there's like romance.
Yeah, there's like romance parts in it. Leia tells Han that she's so glad he suggested they leave, and he's like confused because he didn't suggest anything. And then I'm talking about how romantic this book is, and then like Leia gets this like feral look, and she says, "Let's go to bed."
Is it erotica?
No. The Courtship of Leia was a little bit more like that than this book.
Really?
Is. Remember there was a scene where she was like bathing in front of the guy, and they were like making all these innuendos to each other, and there was more in the Courtship of Leia.
Oh, okay,
that was more pulpy than this one. Mm-hmm. The next day they're scheduled to go what's called skim blading, which is basically just ice skating in Star Wars.
Oh, I thought they were gonna take Kim Kardashian skims and they're just sliding around the ice.
Leia just has one day left before they're scheduled to leave back on the Halcyon, their cruise ship, for the rest of the trip. And she wonders if maybe they can just take a Pruse sleigh ride instead and maybe sneak to the tower.
Okay.
And they ask Jens if they can just kind of leave and take a little sleigh ride. And he's like, I'll take you myself. And he like gets in the sleigh and he takes them right to the tower to their surprise. He makes some vague comments about pollution in the water and stuff and how, you know, they have to kind of go back. And at one point he stops and he checks his watch. Or I don't know actually if it's a watch or a clock or what it would be called in Star Wars.
Just
I don't remember
device,
what I read. He checks
device.
the time, and as soon as he checks the time, there's an ice quake. And that makes Han and Leia realize that these quakes are on a schedule.
It's timed.
It's timed, yeah.
So maybe that's good. He's leaving out all these hints for him.
But that's all the clues they were going to get from him, and they kind of take him back.
I'm sorry, something's like bugging me. What's his name again? The guy who's
Jens. Yens. So I call it Jens.
And does he have a last name like ID?
I'm sure he has a name. I'm sure Jens is his last name and he has a first name. I don't remember what it is.
Oh, okay. No, it was like a Yin said moment, like from
Disney,
like from Kingdom Hearts, like backwards of Disney.
And I'm sure it's an anagram because most Star Wars names are anagrams of either actors, or for authors they'll make anagrams of people they know in real life.
Interesting.
So that's probably
okay. Sorry, that was just my brain just processing it.
No worries. Han and Leia, they decide that they're not done investigating, so they sneak off to break into like one of the shuttles, and they're planning to steal like equipment so they can go under the water and like kind of like investigate the tower.
Ooh, an underwater mission. That's fun.
It's locked, but the door of the shuttle is locked, and there's a little scene where Leia tells Han like, you know, surely that lock won't stop you. And then Han's like kind of offended. He's like, I may be a scoundrel, but I'm not a thief.
He is a thief.
Well, Leia she feels bad and she starts to apologize to him, and just as she starts to apologize to him, he breaks open the lock. So he was just messing with her.
Oh, okay, good.
Basically, they steal this like a breathing thing they can breathe, and this thermal equipment that they put on, and it just kind of regulates their body temperature and keeps them warm in the ice. And they go to like an ice sheet that's like cracked from the quake, and they decide to dive under it and to swim to that tower and see what's going on. And there's a little conversation here they have about at one point they're talking about clothes. I think about what they were wearing for the wedding or something. And Leia comments how it was nice that she knows Han was wearing a nice jacket. And remember that Lando lended it to him and said it was from like Alderaan?
Yes, I do remember.
So Han's like, I'm glad you noticed like the Alderaanian jacket. And Leia's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Lando gave it to me. He says from Alderaan. And Leia goes, that's not from Alderaan. So, so Lando like was lying.
He made him a dummy.
Well,
aww.
Yeah, well,
unless it was just like
that was like a nice little moment, and I was like, I know Lando's like a liar and stuff, but like it was his wedding. I didn't think he would kind of be that messed up to like lie and be like, hey, take this jacket, it's from Alderaan.
Or he's probably laughing to himself in the corner. He's like, that dummy. He's gonna tell his wife that's from Alderaan. He's like, heck no.
They plunge into the water, and it does make a shock, like it's a shock of cold because it's ice water, but then the thermal suits like kick in and it heats them up pretty quickly. But Han does start to panic because Leia realizes this must be what it was like when he was frozen in carbonite, like that shock of cold.
Is that really what it's referencing all the time? Like whenever something like that happens, like you're constantly thinking back to when
for Han, because remember, this is like a week after Return of the, or it's been like a week or so. And it was only like Han in the beginning of the movie was only just unfrozen. So that's still one of his closest memories.
Well, I want clarification. Like the book is referencing like.
Oh yeah, the book is making it clear that Han is having these.
That's
it's
the thought.
Because
that's the
of
reaction.
that. Yeah. The author wanted this to kind of be Han's thing in the book. He's recovering from this. But basically Leia swims over to him and like kind of holds his hands until he calms down and just kind of helps him get through it. And then they swim their way to the station. They again notice that none of the local fish are going near it. And as they get closer, there's several things that become evident. The first thing is they see people in the windows. They realize the station isn't a wreck that's unmanned. There's people in it, like working on it. They realize it's also shaped like a point, meaning this wasn't a space station. This was designed to go under the water and drill into the planet.
So people are working in there, but they don't see Han or
they quickly like
Leia.
kind of swim aside before they realize that before anyone can look out the window.
So they're
and see
being
them.
sneaky.
Yeah, they're being sneaky. The other thing that starts to happen is that the station starts to glow red, and they realize it's about to fire into the ground when they're swimming right outside it. That's going to cause the ice quake. So Han and Leia decide the safest thing to do is swim up right against the station and kind of hold on and hope that they're protected. And it does fire a laser into the crust of the planet, and it causes this huge kickback that makes the station kind of like jolt, but it has these like repulsors that put it back in place. So it goes like, and then it just like goes right back in place.
Oh, they're mining something?
They're mining the carnium. But this causes the water to heat up really quickly, and it turns it from ice to like a sauna. And like they're like kind of like thermal protective gear can't like keep up, so it's starting to fizz out because of this. And then rising from the depths, all of these, well, first like the ice quake happens then, so everything starts shaking, and then all these dead fish just start rising up from underneath. So they're swarmed by all these like dead fish that died in like either the quake or the laser blast. All these droids are then released, and you see that they start collecting this like red stuff in the water, and it's the carnium. So yeah, it's just like you said, they're mining it. They swim back to the surface, and Han says like, the core of the planet will not... I'm calling it a planet. I think this is actually a moon, but I'm just going to call it a planet. But he says the core probably isn't going to survive all this mining, and that devastates Leia because she feels like no matter what she does, like these tragedies just keep happening in the universe. They return to the shuttle, and they call up the Halcyon for help, and Leia tells the captain that there's evidence that the Imperials are here, and the captain kind of panics, and he's like, well, we have to evacuate everyone right away. And that's not what they want because they don't want to leave the moon defenseless. So Han interrupts quickly, and he's like, my wife, she's just overreacting. There's no sign of the Empire. There's just damage in this shuttle. And it's because of, it's not from Imperial sabotage, which is what she thinks. It's just damage. Can you send someone down here to fix it? And Han's hoping they'll send the chief engineer down so that way they can kind of plan privately how to like stop the Empire. Maybe he'll know how. And the captain's like, well, we have a direct link with the shuttle and everything looks good on our end. So then Leia grabs something, and you see she like raises it over her head to like smash a console, and then Han like quickly like mutes the thing, and he's like, no, he's like that's a flare, it will explode. So then she like
imagine Harrison Ford's face like saying that to Carrie Fisher's character.
Yeah. So she puts it down and she grabs like a fire extinguisher instead, and she just smashes the console. And then then you hear the captain. He's like, "Oh, never mind. There must have been a delay. We're picking up damage now. We'll send somebody down."
Funny.
Han asks Leia. He's like, "Where'd you learn that trick?" And then she goes, "From the best," and she like kisses him. They decide they're done like kind of hiding, so they go to confront Jens about everything that they discovered. And when they make their way back and tell him, he's just kind of stone-faced, like no emotion on his face whatsoever. And he tells them when the Empire brought their station into the ice, it destroyed the old city, the ruins they saw, and that like killed over 2,000 people when it happened. And he said, but the commander did promise to leave soon, and they ask who the commander is, and then at that moment this Imperial walks out, and she says, it's me. And this Imperial, her name is Alicia Beck. She's from a junior novel, like... And it was also adapted into a comic book, but she's basically, it's called Smuggler's Run. It was a story where Han has to go rescue a rebel operative, and she's also trying to catch him, and they kind of run into each other, and obviously like he outsmarts her. So she's from another material. If you're wondering, she kind of has like a cybernetic eye. This is what she looks like.
She looks like she just gives me vibes of that one character from Indiana Jones, I think in the third movie. But
oh, the German woman. Yeah.
She just gives me those vibes. Like, she looks strong and independent, but she bad inside.
Maybe it's based off of it. It's also Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Well, Han, he knows that she's gonna just try to shoot them, so he just charges her right away before she can pull her blaster, and he manages to knock her down, and he and Leia like quickly run off in different directions. She does get up, and she starts like calmly aiming and shooting at them, so you get the sense that she's very focused type. Like, she's going to take her time and like make sure she gets things done right. And when she tries to target Leia, Han tries to kind of charge her again, but that just puts him in her sights. But Leia manages to find one of the fisherman's harpoon guns, and she shoots Beck right through like her bicep. And that gives Han time to find cover, and it doesn't seem to slow down Beck, though, who's still like approaching them with the blaster. And Han and Leia see a submersible, so Leia grabs like a fishing net, she throws it over Beck, and then they both run into the submarine and like try to go in it to like escape.
To be clear, is Beck part cyborg?
Yeah, that's why she has a cybernetic eye. I don't think she's... Well, yeah, that makes her part cyborg. Well,
because when you said that she launched a harpoon, like, in the fact that it's not slowing her or disabling her from, like, chasing them, that's why I'm, in my head, yeah. I'm, like, realizing, so she has beyond superhuman strength.
I don't know if she has any parts in like her arm or beyond human strength. I just take it as that she is very focused on who she's hunting, and she's not going to let that stop her.
Just very strong.
That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah.
I haven't read Smuggler's Run, so maybe there's something more there with her.
Okay.
So Han and Leia get in the submersible, and Jens actually tries to help them launch it, but Beck just knocks him out. And she manages to shoot the sub window, so it causes a crack in the glass. And then she shoots the mechanism holding it up, and they get dropped into the water. So now the window is about to crack and break soon, and then that will flood with water, and Han and Leia will drown in the submarine, basically. Leia has Han pilot the sub as close to the station as possible and close to the surface. She's hoping that the heat will be in the water will be like, it'll be warmer around there, and maybe that'll let them break through, because once that water breaks, the new problem is that they're going to have to, the surface of the water is covered in ice. They have to somehow swim up and get through the ice on the surface. And Leia wonders if maybe the Force can help her, so she tries kind of concentrating like Luke did, and she tries calling out for help, but nothing seems to happen from it.
Yeah,
and
she's still struggling.
Yeah, and she resolves herself that when she survives this, she's going to reach out to Luke for training, because she needs this.
Oh, wow. So now she's realizing that despite her feelings about it, she wants to utilize it as a strength.
She wants to utilize it as a strength.
That's nice.
She wants to protect, I think also she wants to protect those like she loves, like Han and anyone else she can help.
Yeah, if you have the ability to at least do that, just know it's for that, never for yourself.
So Han's panicking. He's having those PTSD thoughts of freezing in the cold again from the carbon freezing, and he thinks to himself that he's gonna die, but Leia is like seems to be reading his mind, and she tells him like, you're not gonna die because I'm not dying and I need you. And the glass breaks on the submarine and starts filling with the cold water. They still have the things that will keep them warm, but they don't have like the breathing apparatus anymore.
Oh no.
And the water, it like filling in, it does push the sub down deeper, so they have to like break out, and then they have to start swimming to the surface as quickly as they can. Yeah, and pressure, all of that. And they get to the ice surface, and they start banging on like the surface of the ice sheet to try to break through, but nothing's happening, and they can't break through. And they kind of have a moment where they realize they just can't break through this. And so they're under the water, they hold each other, and they just kind of kiss, sitting there floating in the water, and they're just kind of resigning themselves to like dying this way.
It's like that moment in Waterworld, except they weren't about to die. Have you seen Waterworld?
I haven't seen Waterworld.
The main, really quickly, the main guy, he has gills, so he is able to like swim and help save the love interest, the girl. And before she could go up in the shallow end of the water, because as you know, Waterworld is just all water, there's no land. There was these pirates that were still above, so she couldn't really like make it up and like help herself. So to like stay down and like be able to breathe, the guy goes in the water and he starts kissing her and flooding like her mouth with like oxygen. But you know there's another reason.
I was thinking The Shape of Water at the end when she like.
Also The Shape of Water.
Yeah.
Yes, that's another good one. I really love that movie. Not for like the romance of it. I still find that a little off-putting, but a lot of the symbolism is very unique.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know they're not going to die. So suddenly there's an explosion, and Han finds himself launched onto the surface, and he looks up to find the chief engineer of the Halcyon. I think his name is Zalma. He's a Nalatolan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly either. Do you remember in Star Wars Kit Fisto? He's the green guy with all the tentacles, and he's the one that like when he like force pushes C-3PO when he's a battle droid, and then he like gives this like big smile. I
don't remember.
He was one of, this is Attack of the Clones. He was also
I haven't seen it in years.
He was also one of the Jedi that went with Mace Windu to arrest Palpatine and was killed. He's like green with all these tentacles.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I remember. I wanted to learn more about him.
That's what species this guy is. And
Gotcha.
they're an underwater species, so he was able to dive in and like save them.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna be honest. I thought maybe this planet is known to also have these like huge whales, and I thought maybe a whale would have saved them when Leia called out with the Force. That's what I thought was gonna happen, but it was.
She's not Dory. Speaking whale.
That's funny.
Come and help us.
Basically, Zalma says that the equipment that they stole from the shuttle, it's the Halcyon can track it because it's designed for shuttles that are trapped in space. He was able to find them that way, and then he just used a flare to like blow a hole in the ice, and he dived in and saved them. They feel another ice quake as they're leaving, and Zalma says that in his experience, like water worlds are doomed if they start experiencing quakes like this. So he feels like this planet is like not going to survive whatsoever.
To be clear, like this is supposed to be their honeymoon.
Yes.
Okay. I thought we forgot about that.
No. Well, Leia was hoping that destroying the Imperial Station would be the plan, but she realizes if this world is doomed, they're going to need to evacuate everyone instead. Han kind of stops Leia from walking. He's like sensing how distressed she is, and he's trying to like ask her like, how are you? And she's not making eye contact with him. And then he has to like kind of like grab her face and stay in her vision and be like, how are you? And then Leia's like, Luke could have broken us free with the Force.
Oh,
and
she's
like,
guilty.
I have that same power in me, but I can't use it to save those I love. So yeah, she's frustrated knowing she has that power, but she's struggling whether she wants to learn to use it or not. And Han tells her, well, Luke is not Vader, right? That means you don't have to be Luke. You can find the Force in your own way, in your own time. I should also bring up that Leia's distressed too, because when she came out of the water, she noticed that her wedding ring was gone. So like it completely just broke off in the water and she lost it.
So she has a lot of emotions.
Yeah. At that moment, they run into the girl earlier, the Fisher girl they ran into earlier, Nahai, who she rescues them on like these the Prus sleighs, and she basically says that Jens had sent her out to get them. And the fishermen, they kind of have their own like little resistance going on, and they use these like underwater lights to communicate with each other so the Empire can't figure out what's going on.
Okay, cool.
And basically, Jens was unsure if he should invite Leia to help them because he was afraid that if she failed, what retaliation they would have. But
yeah,
he had decided he was going to ask them for help, and the plan was when Han and Leia left back on the cruise, he was going to give them a piece of art, and in that art was going to have like a message asking for help. But Han and Leia were a little too eager to figure things out, and they kind of ruined that whole plan and discovered all this ahead of time.
I don't think they ruined it.
They didn't ruin it, but yeah.
But essentially, like they wouldn't have sacrificed almost their lives.
Yeah.
If he hadn't stepped in.
Exactly.
Good on him.
They bring Han and Leia and Zalma to their fishing village to like kind of hide them. And Han talks with some of them, and they don't have a lot of food to go around because it turns out the Empire's mining process is also making chemicals that make the fish toxic. So it's also poisoning their food supply.
Oh, I knew that was gonna happen too.
He steps out with the chief engineer Zalma, who tells them that he tells Han that he sent an encoded message to the captain on the Halcyon, and the captain can't help. Really, all he can really do is kind of help evacuate everyone if the world's really falling apart. And Leia's kind of spending time listening to these fishermen like tell stories of their attempts at sabotaging the Imperials. They're including one instance where they stuffed the station's pipes with whale blubber, the sewer pipes, and that like stopped them from mining for like 3 days, and they're really proud of that. And they have this intricately created map of everything. This is a planet of artists too, so they're just good at making stuff. And Leia looks over the map and realizes the most vulnerable part of the station would be the repulsors, because if they don't have the repulsors, the station would just be knocked out by its own blast. So they want to destroy them, but the repulsors are too defended, so Leia kind of makes a plan. We'll send one attack team to attack the station, mainly as a diversion, and then the second team will come in and like try to sabotage the repulsors, and they're going to try to attack the station. And this is kind of Leia in her element, planning a battle with people. So that night, Han and Leia take a private moment together, and they're kind of looking out into the night sky, and Leia suddenly whispers to Han, "I met Kira." So do you remember Kira from Solo? That was the girl love interest in the Solo movie who betrayed him in the end and left with the criminal organization.
Yes.
She has so I talked about those comics earlier, that kind of chart in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. One of those big arcs is the Crimson Reign arc, where Kira comes back with like the criminal empire, and like it's a whole giant arc, and she ends up meeting with Leia.
Yeah.
It's a really cool story. I like it a lot. And
I'm being chilled because I'm like, that would be a good Solo 2.
It would be.
Movie.
And Kira basically tells Leia a story about this time when they were both boys on Corellia, and Han saw this kid getting beat up, and Han kind of just jumped in and saved this boy from being like bullied. And Leia tells Han this. She's like, about this story that Kira told her, and Han kind of remembers it, and he remembers that at the time he hated the fact that it seemed like no one on the planet cared about anyone, and so he like just jumped in to save this kid. And Leia tells him, well, like, you made a difference in that boy's life, and everyone has to start somewhere. And she's basically telling him that Han was always a good person, and it was kind of indicated like all the way back then and there.
I want to cry.
And I'm sure Han has a ton of questions, like, what do you mean you saw Kira? Like, what the hell happened?
I can imagine him, he's just like looking at her and she's like telling the story and he's just like, you met my ex?
I know. But he doesn't have time to ask questions because Zalma like interrupts them because he's like, there's someone on the ship, the Halcyon, that could really help us right now. And he wants to bring down Kelad to help because Kelad has got all that experience with the tractor beams and engines.
What's the name of, I know this is off topic, what's the name of Clark Kent, like his name before?
Kal-El.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm hearing him, like, why does it sound familiar? And I'm thinking all these things. Sorry.
Not Kal-El, not Kellogg, it's Kelad.
There's a lot of Cal. Cal something.
Cal Kestis is actually the Jedi in the Jedi Fallen Order games too, but whatever.
Oh, is that another one? Mm-hmm. They gotta make.
But this is Kelad. It's not Cal. It's not Kalad. It's.
Can you say the right name? Now I'm forgetting which.
His name is Kelad in the story.
Kalad. Okay.
Well, so Zalma wants to bring down Kelad, and Han's like, no way. But Zalma's like, he's a genius, and he could help us. So Han kind of relents to let him come down. They're getting ready for all that, and all of a sudden there's this explosion in the distance, and it looks like it came from the spaceport, and like the ice under the spaceport cracks, and it kind of like part of it just falls into the sea. So I guess the whole planet is kind of over this ice, like ice quake. It makes sense now.
What do you mean over?
Like I think the people on this planet do live just above the water on the ice, the whole planet.
And you're saying the planet itself is not going to survive any longer?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. But Leia kind of makes a connection in her mind, and she asks Riola back on the ship if they launched the shuttle with Kelad yet, and she says no, and she's like, launch it empty and on autopilot. So
that's smart.
It is, because when she launches it, when the shuttle gets close, like a laser blast takes it out. And so Leia realizes that it was Commander Beck who sank the spaceport. She's sending a message, you guys are stuck here with me, you're not leaving.
Okay.
The next day, Han and Leia, they're snuck into the city with a bunch of fishermen. Everyone who's scheduled to work shifts, basically, they're just going to kind of go attack the station instead. Mm-hmm. The Empire seems to have like a skeleton crew there, so they can't really monitor it too much. They get suited up. Han and Leia are in the second team that are going to go try to sabotage the station while the first team attacks. And they get suited up. They go underwater. They arrive, and the battle's already breaking out. There's stormtroopers in like underwater armor, like battling the other fishermen. And Han and Leia's team are getting ready to head to those repulsors and like sabotage them. Han says it's going to take like 10 minutes per each one. To disable it. He's gonna like kind of saw it through it, and Leia's gonna have to like cover him. They barely start, and the station starts powering up. So it seems like the Empire's planning on firing their drill laser, which I think they should have seen coming considering what they experienced. I'm not sure what defense they have against that, but for whatever reason, the station, it doesn't fire. And Han and Leia, they're not sure why, and they manage to sabotage all the repulsors except for one left, which all the remaining stormtroopers kind of surround and just defend to a point where like they can't get to it whatsoever. And droids are being deployed, and they're fixing the other ones. So they need to destroy this last one, but they can't get to it, and the others are about to be fixed, so they don't know what to do. So Leia, seeing how impossible it all seems, she kind of calms herself, and she reaches out with the Force again out into the water. She asks for help, and suddenly there's like all this screaming as this like giant whale comes through. So now the whale does save him.
Just a delayed
a delayed whale. And I guess these whales, they have these like tendrils hanging underneath them. Anything it touches like gets electrocuted. So they're like zapping all the stormtroopers and droids. And the whale just takes out the repulsor, and then not only does it do that, the whale like pushes the station deep into the water. It like takes the whole thing down.
It's just like, sorry down there.
The station, it's still glowing, but again, it's not firing for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I do like here that this is like Leia's one of her first big instances of using the Force, and it mirrors the first time we see her using the Force in The Last Jedi, where she's floating in space, and here she was kind of like floating in water. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, that was the Force? When she died, you mean like,
well, she didn't
floating?
Die. Yeah, when she was floating in space and she used the Force to bring herself back to the ship, that was the first time we ever saw her use the Force like that on screen.
When we first watched it, I don't think we ever discussed it, but this is probably something you like figured out maybe on your own. I didn't realize that. This is the first time hearing
You didn't realize she was using the Force?
To be clear, I just remember her floating in space.
You remember that she like extends her hand and she kind of like flies back to the ship? I'm sure you knew it at the time you saw it. It's probably just been a while since you've seen it.
It's been a while. I'm just remembering her floating in space. Just not whatever specific actions or like what happened.
Yeah, people were making fun of that scene because they said she looked like Mary Poppins. I liked it. But
Mary Poppins?
Because Mary Poppins like flies from the sky. And
I was going to say, what's wrong with Mary Poppins? She's a great lady.
But yeah, it kind of mirrors that because here she is floating in the water, like doing it. And then
okay,
I like that.
And that's probably, this book came out after
that
movie. So that's probably also too where she was like, let's call back to that moment. It's all full circle.
Han and Leia and the fishermen, they're all celebrating their victory, and Prime Minister Jens is there too. Apparently, he led an attack on the surface on the stormtroopers while they were doing all this too. And they're all telling stories about the whale that came and it's like saved the day. All of a sudden, like another ice quake hits though. So that kind of confirms to everyone that it seems like the damage has been done to this world and they're going to need to evacuate everyone. Mm-hmm. And Zalma arrives in with a message. He says part of the station had separated and left during the battle. So that's why the station didn't fire. Then all the powering up of the noise they heard, it was part of it detaching and it was leaving while they were attacking. So it seems like Commander Beck was retreating. The author kind of like hints that the reason she retreated is because it has to do with like there's other stories going on at this time called Operation Cinder, where Palpatine is like after he died he sent like a message out recalling all these Imperials and he's trying to self-destruct the Empire and only keep the most loyal, strongest ones. And it's implied that this Commander Beck probably got one of those messages and that's why she left. Because otherwise they wouldn't have seen why she wouldn't have joined the battle herself. Mm-hmm. The Halcyon is trying to engage with the shuttle right now, though. It's trying to leave into hyperspace, but it's kind of blocking it. And so Han like leaves to go take the shuttle up and like join them and see if he can help them out. So yeah, they're like exchanging fire with each other. The Halcyon is more heavily shielded, but the shuttle is quicker. So they're kind of in a stalemate. And Han's on board and he's trying to help shoot at it, but again, he can't hit it. And at one point the shuttle like tries to like go underneath the Halcyon and like jump to hyperspace underneath it. And then Han has an idea and he has the ship just drop and like smack it out of like orbit.
Whoa, if it made that noise, I'll be like so scared.
On screen it would make some sort of noise like that. What happens next is all of a sudden, all these like these New Republic A-wings come out of hyperspace with a shuttle, and they're able to disable the ship and like board it and like lock up Beck. So the New Republic came to help them, and in the lead A-wing is pilot Shara Bay, and she's in a lot of the comics and books around this time as like a pilot. But you would know
that name.
You would know her as she is Poe Dameron's mother.
Wow, yeah. Love that connection.
Kellad quickly races into the Halcyon and he says that he can save the moon. He knows how to save the moon. Because basically the drilling caused the core of the planet to like be unstable. And he specializes in tractor beams. He says, I know I can way to use the tractor beam to kind of push the core back into place and we can save this planet. And he explains a bunch of technical jargon on how he could do it. And Jens is like super excited to hear this. But then Kellan tells him, I'm going to need to be paid for this. And he lists this huge like sum of money to like save this planet.
Oh, no.
And Leia, she's a diplomat. She counters with a more reasonable sum. And she says the New Republic will pay for it. And Leia kind of tells herself if Mon Mothma ends up not agreeing, she'll drain her own accounts to like save this place. Because she's not going to have another planet like die on her watch. Kellad, he does agree to the terms. And he's like, yeah, that's more money than my contact on the end of the trip was going to pay anyway. So that works.
Oh, he was trying to sure, I'll lowball it for you.
And Leia can see why Han wanted to throw him out of an airlock. Basically, to kind of sum everything up, they set everything into motion to save the moon, and it seems like it's going to take about a year for the full stabilization to take effect, but it's going to all work out in the end. So there's like scenes where they explain how they do it, but it's not very interesting. Yeah, the planet's stabilizing, there's celebration all around. Han and Leia return to the Halcyon, ready to continue their honeymoon. Han leaves to go get some food for them. They're like in their like little sweet room or whatever. Leia thinks about how she used the Force to call the whales, and she thinks it happened when she wasn't trying to control the Force. It just kind of happened like kind of naturally when she was just asking for assistance.
So she's a whale whisperer now?
She's a whale whisperer. And to her that makes sense because she says Darth Vader tried to control the Force, and so it would never come to her the same way it kind of came to him. Mm-hmm. But she can't deny that she does want to learn more, and she is gonna like talk to Luke about it. Han returns and they kind of hug, and then he slips a ring on her finger, a new ring.
Where did he get this ring?
He bought it, but it's a ring described as having 2 purple stones that are kind of interlaced together with like kind of like golden like threads, as like a reference to their old ring being like the golden ones.
That's pretty. Yeah, there's nothing with those Ewoks made that could last that long.
And Leia does start tearing up because she didn't tell Han she lost it. So like he didn't necessarily know. And Han's like, "What, you think I didn't notice?" And he goes, "Well, I didn't, but I noticed you were sad and I figured out why." So that's when he went and got her.
Basically, he's saying, I know. I know.
Han also says his own ring had broken off in the water too at some point, but he's not worried about getting a replacement for that right now.
How come it never, in the pages, they never say about him realizing that?
I'm assuming it was during Leia's perspective chapter when it happened, which is...
But they never had a perspective of him noticing his ring was gone, right?
No.
Interesting, okay.
Well, I think it probably happened the same time Leia lost hers, but that chapter was again from her perspective, so we wouldn't have seen what Han was thinking.
I'm not
at the time.
worried about like when it happened. I'm just thinking, okay, did we ever get a perspective of him just knowing in general?
Oh no, this is the first we learned about it.
So he kind of figured out too, like, if I lost my ring, she lost her ring too, and she ain't gonna tell me.
No, he noticed she was sad, and that's what led him to figure out that she lost her ring.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
He also tells Leia that Chewie is currently making the Falcon more homely for them while they're away, and she asks him what that means, and he says that he's adding a kitchen to it, and then Leia starts like laughing in his face, and she tells him, "I have no idea how to cook. Don't like ever ask me to cook for you unless you want me to poison you."
I was gonna say, I was like, a kitchen? That's what makes it homely for her, a kitchen?
He doesn't know. He has no idea what to do.
His wife of 3 days? You're telling me he doesn't know?
Think about this.
Funny.
It's also funny that he's been living on this ship this whole time and they don't have like a kitchen on there.
Yeah, he's probably just relying on like eating food at wherever planet he smuggles from, right?
Yeah, space McDonald's. The book ends with them like resolving to stay in their room that whole night, and they kiss, and that's like the end of the book. So, what do you think of Princess and the Scoundrel?
My thoughts of Princess and the Scoundrel, I think it's very much more young adult feeling of relationships, because when you're like in your early 20s, they're in their early 20s, kind of, right?
She is. Han's about 10 years older, so he's like 30,
they're young,
early
though.
30s.
They're a young couple. It's just interesting seeing perspective of someone who like has a lot of trauma. Han really needs therapy to get over the whole being frozen in time thing, and then...
Well, he was sent to an ice planet. Like, it's logical.
No, I'm not saying it's illogical. What I'm saying is he needs therapy. He needs like something like better.
I think
help.
Leia needs therapy too.
No, and that's like trauma from her dad, whatever. You know, like just having that feeling of like, oh my gosh, and she was adopted. Like that's a lot of trauma in itself. I'm saying the phrase a lot, but this is what it is. This whole book about their character. But then, like, when you're used to the movies, they don't talk about any of those things, like how they felt, you know. And I know it's like another chapter in their lives as parents from, that's like a whole other story. Ben, like their own son, just like turning the other way, and like Uncle Luke just kind of also messing up too. So it just kind of highlights, you know, despite whatever they will go through, they're gonna have a love for each other no matter what. Definitely a lot better than the other book though. That one was horrendous.
Well, we'll get to that. I like that the chapters are super short, which I've mentioned before. It makes you feel like you read it much faster.
How many chapters is it again?
Like 61 chapters.
And how many pages about?
Between 300 to 400 pages. Normally books are like 30 chapters that length. So yeah, this is like literally like the chapter's like half the length. Almost.
I like that. That's how Sarah J. Maas wrote Throne of Glass.
I like the swapping perspectives. The characterization is on point. I think the author did a good job of capturing their voices. It's perfect. I have to say this is a love story, and this book is about them getting to learn how to be together. This isn't really like an action story. It is like in that perspective. It accomplishes that very well. I like this book, but I'm not crazy about it. It was better. Actually, it was better the second time reading than the first time reading. But I think the biggest fault is that I think it's a little slow once their honeymoon actually starts. And I don't.
A slow burn.
It's a kind of a slow burn, and a lot of the stuff just all of a sudden starts happening at the end. I didn't really find it as interesting when they're on the ice planet and stuff. I also think the other biggest fault of this book is that I think the highest highs are in the beginning. So Leia talking to Darth Vader's helmet and the wedding and the bachelor party, all that stuff is so fun to read about. And that's how the book opens. And I feel like the rest of it doesn't quite live up to the beginning. I wish there was a way she could have swapped it so that it ends on like the wedding itself.
Is it also a little bit of nostalgia that like the characters like C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and even Luke himself, like they're not part of the rest of the journey with them? And it's just dwindled down to just two characters.
I do like books where they're all together. I can't deny that. I don't know if that's against this. It's really about them getting to know each other. And I think I like more action type stories, which is why I think this isn't clicking with me enough.
That's fair. And I don't think it's supposed to be focused only on action.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask the space-wise, like, do you feel like book-wise they rushed the action portions just because it was like drawing close to the end? Or is it spaced?
I don't think they rushed. I think when it happens, it's fine, but it takes them a while to get there. You have him proposing, then you have their bachelor party, and then you have the whole big wedding, and Leia's trying to figure out, do I even want a honeymoon? All this stuff. Then the honeymoon starts, and they're on the ship, and Leia's like trying to figure out how to like swap the captain, and she's worried about work and what the other crew is thinking about her, and Han's getting in this card game, and then they get to the planet and they're slowly trying to figure out this mystery that we already figured out what was happening like right away. And then the battles and stuff happen at the end. So yeah, I just think it's a little too slow paced. I will say I will recommend it because it is well written and it captures their voices well. You just have to go into it knowing what kind of story it is, which this is a story about them learning to be together and not necessarily a more action-y type story.
Right. That makes sense.
Really quickly, I want to compare it versus the Courtship of Princess Leia. So just like a quick compare, like, okay, what do you think comparing this book to the one we did last Valentine's Day, the Courtship of Princess Leia, the Legends version?
There's no comparison. It's not the same characters. It's not at all romantic for me. And the only love story that I did care about was the couple who ended up being together when they weren't supposed to in the beginning, later on.
Oh, Tenel Ka's parents.
Yes, that was a better love story. And I love the character of Tenel Ka's mom. What was her name?
I think Tenenil, I think is her name.
But Han and Leia, they weren't not reading as they were supposed to be together, nor should they be together. It didn't read across like that for me. And I understand it's probably not even on the author. A lot of time, the source material, they just have the movies during that time. And, and
they spent that whole book running away from their feelings. This book is about them actually like embracing their feelings together.
Yeah, and I do understand this is even also before technically they get married, right?
Well, remember, they get married in the beginning of this book.
The other book.
Oh, the other book. Yeah. That was the whole, just them. The book ends on the wedding. We don't even get to see it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, for me, I don't think they're at all the same. There should be no comparison. I think that's just its own book. It's like you said, it's pre-Disney canon. And this is...
Legends. Yep.
And this is post.
Yeah.
Like with Disney canon.
Courtship is Legends canon. This is Disney canon.
So, therefore, there's no comparing. I see them as just two different books. And this one is a better book story than this one. And it just had everything wrong. Yeah. That could happen in a relationship too.
Han here in this book proposes the very next day. Like he's like, I think I love her. And he proposes right away. In Courtship of Leia, he can't bring himself to say it. Leia can't bring herself to say it. They has to kidnap her. All this crazy stuff happens. When Leia finally does realize that she wants to be with him, and he's about to go off to like sacrifice himself and die, all she can say to him is, I like your pants. She can't bring herself to say, I love you. Like, yeah, that was crazy. So yeah, I agree with you there. This is much more on point character-wise. I have to give The Courtship of Princess Leia one thing, though. It's entertaining as hell to read. It's very pulpy and it's fun, but it's fun because of how crazy it gets.
It's very much like 80s, 90s, like storytelling. Like, even though you see the relationship not working, like anything could happen.
Yeah.
Like, and everything did happen.
Oh, what? Leia's going to be marry someone else? Oh, Han kidnaps her? Oh, no, now they're crashed on the planet and there's all these witches climbing the walls trying to get at them. Oh, like,
that was a good
all
thing.
This stuff happens and it's just crazy. So it is, I think it is more entertaining, but it's not, if you want a Han and Leia story, that's not the book for you.
If you don't want a loving Han and Leia have so many layers to them as a couple. I have to say, like, I already mentioned things that Leia went through, what Han went through. Like, there's so many ways to tell their story, but I think this is my favorite way that the author took it.
There's the part in this one where he sees Leia's about to get shot and he like charges the girl and like knocks her out. In Courtship of Princess Leia, when they were being chased by the Rancors, Han like pushes Leia aside and runs past her. So yeah, it's very different.
Very much so.
All right. Well, that's it for today's episode, part 2 of Princess and Scoundrel. But may the Force be with you.
Bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Rogue Reader podcast. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe for more content, and share to any other Star Wars fans you think might also enjoy this content. Thank you very much.